Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and however you are listening to this episode of Leadership Bites, wherever you are in the world, whatever time it is absolutely fantastic to have you with us today. On this episode, I have Brabo. Now, Bo is a fascinating character. He has operated in quite a few different places and spaces and has a really unique set of experiences. Now, his book, From the Battlefield to the Whitehouse to the Boardroom, kind of sets out his career. He retired from the US Army as the Chief of HR Operations with the Whitehouse Communications Agency. So he was the Presidential Communications Officer for President George W. Bush and President Barack Obama. And he is now served in several executive positions. And today, Bo is a keynote speaker. He's an executive coach. He's a business consultant. And his particular expertise is around the execution of strategy. Now, having said all of that, Bo is also the co-host of the Bo and Luke Show, which is a great podcast which is available through any medium which you access your podcasts. The thing for me was, in having a conversation with Bo, I just found him an incredibly engaging individual. You can have all the experiences in the world and all the insights in the world, but if the experience of you isn't palatable, then it's difficult to take on that learning maybe, or that insight. But I think one of the things about Bo is that he's measured, he's considerate, he's got a great sense of humour, and you can tell that he is sitting with a depth of experience to which maybe in a public platform he is somewhat limited as to what he can share because of the experiences and the background that he's had. But it's absolutely clear that when you are of a level and he can share confidence with you, that there is a depth of understanding and experience that I think Bo has to offer. I'm often in front of people that espouse their insights and their wisdom, and I'm not always convinced, but with Bo I was immediately of the belief that this is somebody who has the capacity, the insight, the experience and the depth of personal character that I would want to listen to them. So on that note, on with the episode. Welcome to Leadership Bites with myself, your host, Guy Bloom. This is a leadership podcast where I have conversations with colleagues, I chat with guests, and sometimes there'll be just me talking. You can connect with me at livingbrave.com, and when you enjoy the episode, subscribe and please tell everyone. So, Bo, it's absolutely great to have you on the Leadership Bites podcast.
Wow, how amazing. I'm thrilled to be here, truly.
Probably not as thrilled as I am, to be frank, but that's how it should be, I think.
Oh, this is great.
So until I hit the heady heights of being a Joe Rogan, where you're excited to be on my podcast, I'm the person that's excited to have my guest on. So that's how it works, I think, at this level.
Yeah, I'm with you.
So I will have done an introduction to you at the start of the episode, and obviously I know who you are. But it would be great just to get a line of sight on almost the essence of who you are and what you're known for. And sure, if people do know you, that's fine. But for those that don't, who is Bo? Be great to hear that, Bo.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. No, truly, guys, I'm happy to be here, and it's always fun for me to be on someone else's podcast as a guest to share my thoughts and so forth, especially on leadership. It's a great topic. I'm passionate about it. So who am I? I'm a retired U.S. Army Chief Warrant Officer. I was a presidential communications officer for both Presidents Bush and President Obama. I had the fortunate experience to be in the transition from one polarizing administration to another polarizing administration and be kind of part of all of that. And in the middle of all that, I had a long career in the Army, a little over 26 years, tons and tons and tons of leadership development throughout that time frame, not just being developed, but the actual opportunity to do it and to lead teams, lead troops in very austere environments, combat environments, to at the Whitehouse what we used to call a zero defect environment. So tons of leadership experience throughout that time, and what that all formulated into today, Guy, and the question of, what am I known for? I came up with the term because one of my executive coaches that I use, because I believe in coaching 100%, is he asked the same question. And I said, you know what? It's really about execution. So what I'm known for today, I have a tagline called "Make Strategy a Reality." And if I'm being informal, I'm saying I'm Mr. Executioner, because we can talk strategy. We can, even in the military, you can talk strategy. This is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to win the war, whatever the case might be. And in business, it's how are we going to increase our profits and our sales, new products to market, services. We can have a strategy around all of that, but you got to have somebody who's really good at executing the strategy. You got to have leaders who can influence their people, their teams, their departments, whatever the case might be, and actually do it. So that's my forte today. I would tell you that's what I'm known for today, is to be able to turn strategies into reality, make them hum, make them click, and make them tactical so you can actually do what it is that you set out to do.
So we're going to get to that. I think that's going to be a fantastic thing to talk about. The thing that attracted me to you was when somebody talks about the military, when somebody talks about the Whitehouse. Mm-hmm. I mean, like with all things, I haven't been to the Whitehouse, but if it's like most businesses that I have been into, the looking at it from the outside and then seeing it from the inside, mm-hmm. There's usually a combination of it is as awesome as you'd think it would be, all the way through to I actually don't know how this thing still functions.
Yeah. I like that. That's good.
That's normally true for most organizations. It's kept alive by its own momentum sometimes. So we'll definitely talk a little bit about that, and I'd love to hear some thoughts on it. But just for the first part of this, I'm always interested in how somebody got to where they are. Mm-hmm. And I think that's quite fascinating, because I think experiences maketh the person. Mm-hmm. And sometimes we come from, silver spoon situations, or sometimes, I was born up a mountain, and we didn't even have an indoor toilet, and everybody's journey is different. And it'd be great just to get a sense of yours. How did you get to, or what were the key points of you getting to that position that you've just spoken about and that you now sort of operate in?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I definitely, and I ask people, or I try to influence others to really look at pivotal moments and define them in their life. I had those, and I've looked back numerous times to really define when those moments were that really changed the course that got me to where I am today, or even got me to the White House. For me, it literally started at the age of 17 when I was in high school. We had what was called a career day. So you have all these different people, different professions, adults come in, want to talk to all the students and tell them about what they do. And the one that back then that got the most attention was an Army recruiter. So a military recruiter came in and had probably the session I went to, 200 kids, 200 of us listening to this person. And it got me excited listening to him and talking about all the things that you could do. And back then, the slogan was "Be all that you can be." That was the Army slogan that lasted for decades. I kind of bought into all of that right there in that speech he was giving. I had known, though I'd never really talked to them much about it. Both of my grandfathers were World War II veterans in the Army. Right. Never really talked to them about their time in the service. My father was in the Navy in Vietnam, so there's some military history in the family. But I decided that was it, and I was going to raise my right hand and join. So I joined what's called the Army National Guard, which is basically a part-time soldier. 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks in the summer. Had the opportunity to go to boot camp right after my junior year of high school. So in between junior and senior year of high school, I'm in basic training. I was 17 years old. Parents had to sign off to allow me to do it. But that was the time in my life, Guy, where I learned discipline. I learned commitment. I learned what it was like to get up at 3 a.m. in the morning every single day. So looking back, I feel very fortunate that at a young age, I was learning some very critical, didn't realize it then, but I was learning some very critical life lessons, not just how to be a soldier, but just how to stick to something, how to be disciplined, how to be committed, how to be part of a team as a follower, right? I had no leadership abilities whatsoever.
How to make your bed, right?
How to make your bed, the importance of making your bed, and how to clean your weapon, and the weapon won't shoot right if it's not. I mean, just so many different principles. We could do hours just talking about the principles from that one summer of my life. But that kind of pushed me forward. I stayed in that. I went to college. After I graduated from college with my bachelor's degree, I was working for a little while, and then I missed the uniform. And I'm like, well, if I'm going to do this, I want to do it full time. I don't want to just do it part time. So I did it again. And it was always easy for me in those scenarios, starting out, to say yes, to say, this is an opportunity. It's available. I'm going to do it. I'll say yes. I'll sign the contract and go do it. So that's what I did. And then I was 24 years old at the time, and I went on active duty full time. And 20 years later, I retired, which was just 7 years ago. But the point is, throughout that 20 years, and I like to do this as part of keynote addresses that I do, it's the power of saying yes when doors open, and looking at things, not that it's an automatic yes, but really looking at opportunity first with, what are all the positives of this? What could happen with this? Do I say yes? Versus the negative attitude of, no, I'm never going to do that. I'm not going to take that opportunity. I'm not even going to consider it. I had just the opposite attitude. Mine was always think positively, keep an open mind, and have a tendency to say yes. And I did that. This was another pivotal moment. I did that 1998 or so. I had only been in the service for about 4.5, 5 years at that point. And I got a phone call one day, and it was just an individual. I had no way to verify who the person was, but it was just a phone call while I was working. And he said, "Hey, you want to jump out of planes? We have an assignment for you." It was a military type of assignment. I can't tell you where it is, what it is, who it's with, but if you'd like to do it, I need you to send me all this paperwork about yourself. So this is a movie moment, isn't it? Yeah, it is. And I said yes, and I sent him all the paperwork. And the next thing you know, I'm part of this amazing unit. I went to airborne school, got to jump out of planes, just like he said. Got me my security clearance that I needed, and then that's where I met the individual who would later recruit me to go to the White House. So all of those things started to align, and I started to learn the value of network. Even within the military, having the network support you and be there for you, people you can reach out to professionally, and so forth. So I was in that for a few years, and the gentleman was my supervisor. He was my boss, and he went to the White House through his network. And then the next thing you know, he's giving me a call one day, and he says, "Bo, I have a once in a lifetime opportunity for you. I want you to come work with me at the White House." There again, yes, I'll do it. Right. So I got in, and then I was there for a few years. I left. I went to Germany for 3 years. But we kind of, informally had a plan that I would leave, and then the timing would be right, and he would retire, and I would interview and try to get his job. So go back to the White House again. And this time go back as the boss, who I used to work for, take his position. And that's exactly how it worked. I interviewed with the command and got the job. So I went back, was the chief of HR, and got to train as a presidential communications officer and start leading teams, communication teams for both President Bush and then President Obama. So some very defining moments in the power of saying yes, I believe, staying positive.
There's something, there's something there about the more dominoes you knock over, right? The more the roots open up and the more possibilities occur. And if you stay static, wondering why nothing's going to happen to you, well, that's because you're not moving, I guess, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, no, I think that's a perfect analogy. If you're not moving forward, you'll stay static, and then you'll always be wondering why the door's
Did
not
that
open.
come into you because, some people I've got two boys and, the different characters. So was that inherent in you, or do you think there was an experience from within the family where there was somebody that kind of gave you that mindset?
I think it was just people that I interacted with inside of the military. Right. There was, looking back, there was no one, and this isn't any type of, shot over the bow at any of my family members, but it was all inherent as to what I was learning and so forth inside of the Army itself, that, and the people that I was meeting. And I just met some amazing individuals. And, you start emulating, right? You start, hey, this leader, I really like working for this guy or girl, has really great leadership talents, or they work really well with people. And you just start watching and learning and listening and emulating and start building your own toolkit, your own professional abilities. And the next thing you know, like you said, you've knocked down some dominoes and the next door opens and you walk through it.
Yeah, I had Major General, he's retired just recently, but Major General Paul Nansen from the UK, and he was Commandant of Sandhurst, which is the leadership college in the UK. And we were talking about those formative years, about how critical they can be. It doesn't matter if you're playing football, soccer, I used to do martial arts, it doesn't matter what it is. Yeah. But if you're in the right, so you're in something positive, then there's always going to be peers and people older than you that are showing you the way, about it's okay to fail and, get off your ass, son, and, whatever it is, it doesn't matter, right?
That's right. Absolutely. Yeah, no, that's fantastic.
Yeah, I definitely see that as I speak to people during this process of speaking to people on podcasts. It's sometimes there's a critical moment, but usually it's because at that kind of, 13 to 19 area, they were exposed to something that had its own momentum to it.
Yep.
And there were the nature of the people in whatever it is they were doing, sort of drove them forward. So I definitely see that, and something I definitely recognize. So awesome. Being in the White House, that comes, with its own sort of kudos and no doubt its own. There must be a million stories, I'm sure.
Sure.
Some you can talk about, and some will go with you to your grave.
Yeah, most likely.
I'm sure. But what's the? And we touched on it slightly when we were talking just before we started. We pressed the record button. Organizations are a machine, and then there's people that come and go who are the figureheads. Maybe could be the CEO, can be the president, and I just wonder how much of an influence somebody coming in at that level makes to the inherent process that's within already in situ. Yeah. And I don't know if that's something that's something that you note or have an opinion on or observe.
I do. I think I'll put it into three buckets. So the president goes on a trip. He could go to London. He could go wherever, or she. And three main elements that make all that happen in that machine. One is the White House staff, of course, and they're the ones setting the agenda, doing some event coordination, wherever the president's going to go, who he's going to speak with, those types of things. And then you have the United States Secret Service, and they're the big machine taking care of security. And then you have the other main machine is the communications aspect, which I was part of, to make sure that everybody can talk, that the president and his staff can have the exact same type of capability, regardless of where he's at in the world, as if he was sitting in the White House. So whether secure telephones, non-secure telephones, secure video conference, all of those capabilities have to be present wherever he is, period. There is no other option. That's when we talk about zero defect, like that's it, right?
I was going to ask you about that. So you beat me to it. That means
we can get into that.
It's got to work, right?
It has to work, 100%.
Yeah.
So the machine of, let's say 2/3 of those three pillars, security, communications, they're so driven and system based and checklist and regulation 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 and
to China, to wherever China, then that machine can get them to China. Right.
Exactly. That's that machine's going to get them to China. That machine's going to allow them to be seen and heard on the media and the television and everything else. And then it's the other pillar in the piece that changes, and there's different leadership philosophies and so forth, but their overall impact on the machine itself is minimal. To the operations of the White House. So I wouldn't look at it any differently than a large, I think today you're probably talking, that machine, and I think this always surprises people. There's around 33,000, 3,500 type people that are running that machine and supporting that on a daily basis. That's a large company. Yeah. Large companies have operations, you have chief operations officers going to make that company run. That's the same thing happening there. And I think that's what's interesting. You go in the White House on the weekend, maybe giving somebody a tour, and it kind of feels like a museum. And you're walking around and there's artwork on the walls and nice furniture, and that's all fun and dandy. But go in there Monday through Friday, and it's a business. It is, there's people working, the place is humming, and so forth. Yeah.
I'm always fascinated because when you get businesses that you go and talk to and do work with, as myself, 5,000, 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 people in an organization, and then that senior team, they can be there long-standing, or they can have a level of rotation. So again, I'm always quite interested by that that legacy mentality of how much do you care about the rest of the pyramid in the context of depending on what your plan is. And if you're going to be here for the next 10, 20 years, maybe you'll take a lot more. But if you're on a 3-4 year career rotation or voting rotation,
that's right.
Where do people's thoughts go? It's quite, no, that's a bigger topic, but I guess you notice that. Yeah,
for sure. And that's, so you just kind of look at that as, I always found it fascinating in that, the higher ups can change. It can be a few years, it can be 8 years max. And then there's going to be that leadership's going to change. But the foundational items that are so concrete and set in stone on those other pillars, it's truly fascinating to watch all that work together and so forth.
So when you're talking to groups and you're working with organizations, and you talk very much about being somebody that can help take maybe the esoteric, the ethereal, and the big idea and the dream and turn it into something that's a fundamental output.
Yeah.
What is it about that line of sight that you have? What are you bringing that is beyond a process map or something that is just, hey, I'd like to introduce you to a model, and everybody goes, oh, good God, not another one. So what are you bringing to that comes from your experiences?
Yeah, I like to break things down for people as in minute detail as possible. And I think one of the, and I'll see these even today all over the place. And it's really talking about, I call it battle rhythm, and I'll place the military aspect to what a battle rhythm is, but then I'll take it into a company and talk with folks, say, what does this actually mean to you in your daily work, right? How do you perform better, and so forth. And I literally start them from the beginning of the day, because in the military, that's where it starts. It starts at the very beginning of your day when you get out of bed in the morning, and what time that's going to be, and where you have to be, when you have to be there, what you're going to do when you actually get there. It's all laid out, and it's all planned, and it's all executing according to that plan. So I often talk to people, and I'll say, well, you got to start your day. You really need to get up early. Right. And you can see those types of things floating around. Let's build a battle and get up early, do the best you can during the day, focus on, calendar block your day, build a system. And I say, okay, all of that is great. But if you've never gotten up early before, how are you going to get up early? And I'm using this as an analogy, right? Yeah. How are you going to do that? Right. You got to have the tactics in place to actually make yourself start something new or start this process. and so forth. So it's the analogy of, all right, well, if you're going to get up early, you need to put an old style alarm clock across the room so that when it goes off, you have no choice but to get out of bed to shut it off. That's step one. Make sure that you have whatever you're going to do ready, whether that's a glass of water or you're going to read your book, however you're going to start your day. Let's talk through that. So make sure it's placed and it's ready on the table for you to do that. Set it up the night before so you're not worried about it in the morning, and you go back to your standard and you say, well, I'm just going to shut off the alarm and jump back in bed. You got to have it all. You got to have it all planned out, and you got to have
one clock downstairs. So you've got to go down the stairs to turn that
whatever. That's
whatever
right.
It takes,
right. Whatever it takes. And then if you're going to put, if you're going to use calendar blocking, to help set up your day and what it is that you need to work on. So, if you needed to have a meeting in the morning with your team, right? You can't just put on your calendar a team meeting from 9 a.m. to 9:30. That's fine, but define what that meeting is. What are the expectations of the people attending the meeting, right? I mean, you got to get into some detail and help people really work through that in their minds.
Yeah.
So they're prepared. They get the most out of every event of their day. And that goes back to what earlier about a zero defect environment. If you are working in an environment, not all environments are like that, but if you're working in an environment and, it's very performance driven, you have to be meticulous and purposeful about what you're doing. You can't, when it's time to sit down and do something, you can't then be thinking about what am I going to do?
Yeah, you just said meticulous.
Yeah,
that meticulousness and that purpose, I think, is something that I always talk about, the creation of habit.
Yeah.
And, the analogy somebody once gave to me was when I was trying to deal with fitness some years ago. He said, you know what your issue is, Guy? He says, you're trying to get fit. I went, well, He went, yeah. He goes, yeah, what you want to do is create the habit of fitness. I went, work out. He says, so every morning, just do one press up and do one sit up and do that till you can't not do it.
I love it.
Yeah. He said, that's much better than trying to do 30.
Yeah.
And then you go, I'm aching. And then you have 2 days off and then you've lost the habit. So he said, create the habit through basically what you're saying, process.
Yeah.
And then when you can't not do one, you've got the habit of fitness. And I thought, the man's a goddamn genius. But that's exactly what you're talking about.
That's exactly it. And it's some of the most simple things, like create the habit. To me, they sound so simple, right? And to many, they probably do sound simple. But then you have to go back to, okay, so then why do so many people not do it?
Yeah, but everybody knows how to give feedback, right? But they've all got at least 3 people we haven't given it to. So
that's right. I think that is perfect. I love that.
So that creation of habit and that creation of or that process that creates habit, I guess for me, one of the interesting things is when you're dealing at a senior level, people have got there because they're not daft.
Yeah.
I'm of an age, I must have achieved all of this by being halfway intelligent. And, when you come in as an external person, I guess the process and the story that you've got to offer is one thing, but how do you get people who are basically at the top of their game, maybe positionally, even if they're not top of their game in terms of their performance, to look inward and to really take up the challenge, I guess, of doing stuff differently? Is that something that, you think about a lot?
Yeah, for sure. Because they and it's a barrier to try and break through because I think of the success that they've obviously had and that they currently have, because they've made it to that level. Right. But I think there's a lot of different points that you can look at with them. And it's always coming across in a way, I think, it pumps them up, gets them excited to take themselves to the next level.
Right.
I had a client recently and we were talking and he's like, I think this is, going pretty well. It's going good. I'm like, maybe it is, but let's make it great. Right. And if it's great, let's make it exceptional. Like, let's keep pushing. Don't just stay stagnant. Stay stagnant and great might feel great, but you could really take it to the next level, because if you're doing great, you probably have a lot of attributes and capability already. Now let's keep working on those and make it exceptional or phenomenal, or just like keep pushing them forward, because they probably the kind of individual that has even more to give to their people, their teams, their companies, their stockholders, or whatever the case might be. And it's just, does that make sense?
It does, and I'm always interested by that. So again, being of an age, being 50 now, I get to say things with an element of hopeful insight or wisdom. We can do that, but I do sometimes think, getting fit isn't your issue. I mean, it's something that you've got to wrap your head around. But being very fit,
that's a different
kettle of fish, right?
It is.
Yeah. And being good at leadership and management is one thing, but being great at it, it's in the detail, it's in the subtleties, it's in the elegance. And I sense that's what you're talking about.
It really is, right? So you hear people, I also use the analogy, you can go out and play a great game of golf. Like you say, I played great today. Doesn't mean you're a great golfer. Right?
Yeah.
You can have a great game or a great day. Doesn't mean you're a great golfer. There's a difference between that. Yeah. So
that's really pleasing. That creating the patterns, creating the habits. That actually say, are you willing to put the hard work into 100%. What might be incremental steps, I guess. That
I think
leads to greatness.
Yeah, absolutely. And I literally just was reading, because I also believe in reading. Reading is a good thing for professionals, that just read as much as you can. And it was along the lines of fitness, because I have the habit of fitness. I have that habit. I love it. But, it was kind of something that humbled me in the moment of reading it the other day, that said, you're not going to get where you want to go in your fitness journey in 5 months, maybe 5 years, but not 5 months. Like the body, no matter what, the body just doesn't work like that. And that kind of humbled me for a minute, and like, it's hard work continually, over and over, incremental steps. You'll see your improvements, but the habit has to continue, and you got to keep pushing forward to truly realize, if you want to get to that next, or maybe 3 levels ahead of where you are today.
Yeah. It's when you read somebody like David Goggins that you think, maybe that level of aspiration that I go, do you know what, David, I'm going to leave that to your territory.
Yeah, maybe so.
With just some people operating at such a level where I go, it's, and I think that's another thing when you're working with leaders and something like that. There is something about sometimes the vision on what great is that person is the 1% that you're looking at. And that can be, weirdly enough, its own demotivation. It's not about setting your sights low, but contextually high for you, and maybe not at a level of aspiration that is, if you're not perfect or not as good as they are, then it's a failure. And I think that's an interesting one that comes into it a lot.
Yeah, I would agree with that completely.
So when you talk about values-based results, what is that for you? Just bring that alive for me just for a few moments, so I get a sense of, because people talk about it, but they have a kind of subtly different slants on what it is.
Oh, sure.
When they say that.
Yeah. So values-based results for me started with the Army. The Army has, and this is where I learned values and what they mean and how they're pushed. The Army had 7 values, and what was truly done exceptionally well, and of course you're talking about a 250-year-old organization, was all of the behaviors from top to bottom to top, from every single individual person, there had to be certain behaviors that you can say, the way these people act, the way they behave every day, are aligned with what our values are. Vice versa, if you don't have any established core values in your organization, you could look at how everybody's behaving and then take all those behaviors, study them, and say, oh, these are what our values are, because this is how people act every day. So values-based leadership goes into the heart of personal, individual behaviors and what it is that you need on a daily basis from your team that should then define or align with your established core values, all the way to it kind of makes me chuckle sometimes when I see books like, here are your 20 interview questions that any interviewer could use to interview an employee. Like, okay, maybe those are foundational and there's some foundation ones, but if you really want to find talent that's right for your organization, you need to craft questions that would elicit responses that are aligned with the types of behaviors you'd want to see that equal your core values in your company. Because if you don't get that, you're going to find people that aren't a match for your organization, because they're not going to behave, or they're not going to think that the behaviors that you want are the ones that they believe in, and so forth. So I really try to focus people on, you got to get all the way down to how you ask interview questions, how you do performance management in your company, and how leaders inspire people to behave in certain ways. And everybody needs to be on the page with what your core values are as a company. And that has to start with the CEO at the top. Can't just be words on the wall, when you walk into the reception, or words on a website, and so forth. Because in the end, I drive this all home in my book, and I'm like, how am I going to explain this to people in a way that makes sense? So I actually put it in a formula. I'm like, just follow this formula. And I put, behaviors over time multiplied by all the employees in the company. It's going to equal your culture, your corporate, your company culture. And if something's wrong in your culture, or you don't like how things are, the environment of your company, you got to go back and look at the behaviors on that side of the equation, because something's not right and how people are behaving. And they're not either aligned with your core values at the top, and maybe they haven't been communicated well. Maybe it hasn't been shared well across the organization. And there's tons of studies that organizations that actually get this right, they have higher profit margins, they have higher sales revenues, they just have it all. They have much better opportunity to excel as a company than companies that struggle with it. Less turnover, higher retention, and so forth. It's just, anyway.
No, I'm fascinated by that, because I think when you're a startup and you've got 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, you're all in a room, you're all in an office, you're all there for the same reasons. These things almost maybe don't get thought about too much, or maybe they do, but it's relatively easy because you're attracting at a local level, or you're attracting top talent. But when you go into the thousands and the spread demographic, nobody doesn't get it, but it's the drive to say, I need a bum on that seat. Yeah. And I haven't found anybody who's the right, I've got some really competent individuals and they can get it done. Versus, but do you want them in your organization? But I need that workload done because I'm getting pressurized to do it. Yeah. That's the biggest battle for a lot of people. And I talk about, I don't know if you do, but I talk about tolerances. If you allow the tolerances to grow, all of a sudden you're tolerating things. And it kind of creeps up on you by accident.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, and you must see that, I guess. And I guess in the military and in the Whitehouse and stuff like that, I don't know, is there how is performance tolerated? I mean, is it held to I'd love to hear. It's
held to high standard, right? So when you think when you take it from a military perspective, in our services, we talk about special type assignments, special units. And you can say, being assigned to a special assignment like the Whitehouse, or you make it to a Navy SEAL team, or the Army Special Forces, U.S. Army Rangers. Those are super high performing organizations. And so low performance is not tolerated, is the point, right? You don't accept, there's no such thing as accepting mediocre, average, or low performance. It just is not, because it doesn't fit with the organization and what the organization has to accomplish. Many of those organizations there's life and death taking place on a regular basis, and somebody, even somebody who's on the logistics or the supply chain side, right? If they didn't check or double check and triple check that all the supplies were in the container that are going to get shipped with the team, it could be food, it could be, water bottles, it could be ammunition, whatever the case might be.
I was expecting more bullets.
I need it. Hey, you didn't give me a full load here. This is not good. That could have detrimental impact to the team as a whole. So you would not accept any tolerance for anything less than doing your best.
So this is an interesting one. I'm just alert to time, but I'm just aware of when you have that emergency services, when you have the military, when you have whatever that might be, and there's as you say, there's an outcome where it's fundamentally critical, not just as a financial outcome, but as a life outcome. And of course, not of course, but what I notice is that there's a lot of rhetoric about giving people time to develop. There's a lot of rhetoric about doing the right thing by people, which of course is correct. Yeah. But it's that line between giving somebody the opportunity to get good enough,
right,
versus that, oh no, it takes up to a year to get rid of somebody here. And I'm like, and I find that fascinating, where that drift, and again, you with your HR background and what you do, is that some people talk about best practice as if it's the law. And I kind of go, is it the law, or is it just that that's the way it would be if it was an ideal world? And I just wonder if you come across that kind of having to put reality back into a workplace.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think the reality is when you have to this goes back to for me to the heart of leadership and caring about your people. So even if you're in high performing, and I'm saying that tolerance, you don't tolerate low performance. It doesn't mean that you take away the component of caring, 100% caring about the people that you lead. And in part of that, when you're bringing somebody into your organization, what you just said, takes a year to get rid of them. It takes a year to develop them, to get them to where you want them to be. Then if they're not performing where you need them to be, and you've given them every opportunity, all the training, all the development, all the motivation that they need, the resources that they need to really be at the top of their game at the end of that year, then maybe they weren't a good fit, right? And then that's when now we've given you every opportunity. Maybe you're not the best fit for this organization. So yeah, you have to do all those things, Guy. I think it's not really leadership at all for me. You have to 100% care about the people that you're leading, and you got to put them on a path to success and give them every opportunity to get there. If they fall, they fall, but it's on their accord, not yours.
That makes a lot of sense. So if I've got two more sort of main questions for you, and the first one for me is, again, if we were sitting down with a steak dinner and whatever, I'd go on with you for forever, I think, to the point where you go, Guy, I really do need to go home. But I'm just alert to the fact that what is there anything for you that is, Guy, if I think about I think a lot of what we do is that the mentor we had, or the role model that we had, or do you know what, even if he or she wasn't a role model or a mentor, I just saw this one person and I never saw them again, but they just did this one thing and it really struck me. Do you have anything in your kind of canon of steps forward that you go, that was a real deal breaker for me when I saw that, or I was told that really accelerated or reinforced your thoughts on leadership?
Yeah, I do. I think it was another pivotal moment from a leadership perspective. And it wasn't just a moment. I had the opportunity. This individual was my direct supervisor, if you will, commander of our organization that led us into Iraq. He was a U.S. Army Military Academy of West Point graduate. And from the moment I got off a plane in Germany and I met this individual, and he exemplified everything in caring about me and my family from moment one. Everything, he had everything ready, because this is the first time. I mean, that wasn't my first time, but bringing the whole family to live in a foreign country. I had accommodations. I had food in those accommodations. I had transportation set up, somebody to pick me up and get me to where I needed to go. And all of these things. He had the housing office ready so I could find a permanent accommodations. He had everything lined up that was taking care of me and my family, even though he has all of these responsibilities on his shoulders. And oh, by the way, 4 months later, we're deploying to combat, right? I mean, just a ton of responsibility. It didn't faze him whatsoever that in that moment, I have Bo and his family. They're new here. I'm going to do what I would do anyways and take care of them. And that type of leadership didn't stop. I mean, I saw that for the next almost 2 years that I was under this individual's leadership. And the man was 27 years old at the time.
Wow.
But yeah, I was like, wow, that's if I'm going to emulate anybody with the core concepts of leadership and how to take care of people and how to take care of your organization and how to get your organization ready and be a high performing team, I'm watching him, right? I'm going to emulate what he does, really learn what he's doing and see if I can develop that in myself. Yeah, it's the best example I have. And you don't always have to look, to the Tony Robbins or the John, the pies in the sky type of people that are, popular, almost celebrity like. Sometimes you can find that right around you. Yeah.
I'm fascinated by that capacity. It is one thing I see in leaders, which is who are, I think, doing it right, which is that capacity to hold multiple truths.
Yeah.
The capacity to, of course, some things are urgent and important, but to not let other things drop off the table.
Right.
And, there are people where I go, oh, I should have done that for you. I'm sorry. You're on my list, but you never make it to the top. I hear myself saying that.
Yeah. Isn't that fascinating?
Which isn't what your fella did, right? He'd have gone, no, it's done, guy. And I'd been, whoa, considering what you're dealing with.
He could have delegated that to any one of 70 other people, right? He could have, absolutely, but he didn't. Yeah. He was I was his direct report, and he made that a priority. Didn't let it fall off his checklist of things to do, if you will.
So, Bo, what is and this is a bit of it's not a sneaky question. It's a great question, but you're going to go, but what's the best, and it's not about you being, arrogant about yourself, but what's the best bit of advice you think you've ever given somebody?
Oh, wow. That is a great question. Whew. The best bit of advice that I have given somebody. Man, I think it's along the lines of, wow, Guy, you stumped me. You'll have to put some pauses in here.
I will do.
Delete those out. I think it comes along the lines of, and I did this with multiple people because I tried to keep the same mantra about myself and what I try to encourage and inspire in others. It's to not be fearful of trying, right? Try. And even if you fail, see what you did wrong, try to figure out what you did wrong and try it again. Keep going after it, keep going after your dreams, and don't quit. I had a young person that worked for me. I'll just give you a real quick example. And he would always see people outside my office, coming in and wanting help. And he came up to me and he said, people would call me Chief because of my ranks, informal term. He'd say, Chief, how do you stay so calm? All these people, they want your help. They need something from you. They know you're the expert at what you're doing. And you just stay calm and you smile and whatever. And my response was, I said, well, I'm not afraid to talk to them. There's no fear in helping somebody. And they know that I'm going to treat their issues like they're mine. And that's that. Maybe that's another one. I've always looked at it. So even from from a work perspective, Guy. I think it's if we take it in the corporate sense, if the CEO came into my office and he needed something, I'm going to give that person a level of effort to make sure that I'm taking care of the CEO. If I had someone from the mailroom come into my office and need something from me, I'm going to give them the same level of effort I gave the CEO, because that's what's important to them and
that's
what they
a differentiator. That is,
yeah, that's one thing. So that's the piece. Well, in hindsight, I think that's the piece of advice I try to tell people, especially if you are in, if you're in the service industry, right? If you can get yourself to a level where if you're really bringing your best, then bring your best. It really doesn't matter who's on the other side of the phone, the table, the computer screen. Give it your all. Treat them all the same. And if you treat people and their issues or problems or concerns as if they were your own, it will produce a different result.
Okay, so Bo, I'm going to leave a link in the description to your book, which is From the Battlefield to the Whitehouse to the Boardroom.
Yes, thank you.
Which is just a great title, leading organizations to values-based results. So
right.
I think that's going to be an absolute corking read for anybody. And, just for me personally, when I meet somebody with a depth of experience, I feel myself on the precipice of going on and on and on and talking and talking and talking.
Yeah, I do the same.
So I have to respect your time, but maybe there'll be a round two.
Yeah.
Along those lines. But just for me, I'm going to ask you to stay on for a few moments. Thank you so much for your time. It's been an absolute joy. We've done an hour almost. Thank you so much for taking the time to come on the podcast.
Thank you, Guy. Appreciate it.
That's it. So I hope you enjoyed the episode. Please share so others get to hear about us, and subscribe so you keep up to date on new episodes. Also visit livingbrave.com if you want to connect with me and find out more about executive coaching, team effectiveness, and changing culture. Oh, and of course you can buy my book Living Brave Leadership on Amazon. So on that note, see you soon.